listen to this alone in the dark.
It happened last winter in the parking structure under my apartment building. I had just finished a late shift and got home a little after midnight. The garage sits 2 floors below the lobby, and most nights it's quiet down there. Just the hum of the overhead lights and the sound of cars cooling off after people park them. That night felt normal when I walked in through the stairwell door. I remember the smell of concrete and oil, the echo of my shoes, and the way the motion lights flicked on 1 row at a time as I moved toward my car. I had parked near the back wall because the closer spots were already taken earlier that evening. I remember unlocking the car with the remote and hearing the doors click open across the empty space. Nothing about it felt strange at first. I had just reached the driver's side when I heard something move somewhere behind the rows of cars. At first, I thought it was another person coming down the ramp, or maybe someone unloading groceries from their trunk. The sound wasn't loud, just a shift, like weight moving slowly across concrete. I stood there for a moment listening, because the garage usually carries sound pretty far, but it went quiet again. I remember saying out loud, "Hello?" just to see if someone answered. My voice echoed off the ceiling and came back at me in pieces. No reply. I told myself it was probably someone leaving the building, and I got into the car. I sat there for a second before starting the engine. That's when I heard it again. This time it was closer. Something scraping lightly against the floor, slow and deliberate, like something dragging along the ground. I leaned forward over the steering wheel and looked through the windshield across the garage. The lights only cover certain rows, so a lot of the space stays in shadow between the concrete columns. I remember staring at those shadows, waiting to see someone step out and wave or walk past a car. Instead, I heard it. It was low and thick, like air being pushed through a throat that didn't belong in a parking garage. I froze with my hand still on the ignition. The sound didn't echo like a person talking. It stayed heavy and close to the ground. My chest tightened because I knew immediately that it wasn't a dog and it wasn't a person. I slowly opened the car door again and stepped out, trying to see around the line of parked cars. The motion lights at the far end of the garage flicked on 1 at a time, like something had just passed through them. The light spread across the floor and reached the columns, but whatever moved through there stayed behind the vehicles where I couldn't see it clearly. I remember whispering, "Who's there?" because I still wanted it to be a person. The garage went completely quiet again for a few seconds. Then I heard breathing, not fast breathing like someone running, slow breathing, wet. Close enough that I could hear the air dragging through something thick. It came from behind the car parked 2 spaces away from mine. I leaned sideways just enough to see under the vehicle, expecting to see someone crouching or maybe a large animal hiding in the shadows. Instead, I saw 2 hands slide slowly across the concrete from the other side of the car. The fingers were too long. The skin looked tight against the joints, like it didn't fit the bones underneath. The hands stopped halfway under the car and stayed there for a second, pressing flat against the floor like it was feeling the ground. My stomach dropped. I stepped backward toward my car door, and the hands pulled back out of sight. For a moment, nothing moved. Then the thing stood up behind the car. I saw it through the windows of the vehicle first. A tall shape rising slowly, shoulders bent forward, head tilted down like it was looking at the ground instead of at me. The overhead light hit part of its face, and I saw skin stretched tight across the jaw, and a mouth that hung open too wide. The arms were long enough that the hands nearly brushed the ground when it stood upright. It lifted its head slowly and looked directly at me. The sound came from its throat while it watched me. Not loud, just a slow, dragging noise like air scraping across something broken inside its chest. My body locked up. I couldn't even reach for the car door handle at first because my hands were shaking so hard. The thing took one step forward from behind the car, and the motion light above us flickered brighter. I could see the way its shoulders hunched forward and the way its head twitched slightly like it was adjusting to the light. It wasn't rushing me. It wasn't even walking fast. It just stood there and watched me like it had been waiting for someone to come down into the garage. I finally grabbed the door handle and pulled it open. I got halfway into the driver's seat when I heard its feet scrape across the concrete. Slow steps, coming closer. I slammed the door shut and locked it immediately. My hands were shaking so badly that it took me 3 tries to get the key into the ignition. The headlights turned on and flooded the garage with light. The beam caught the thing standing only a few feet in front of the hood of my car. It didn't react to the light. It just leaned forward slightly and stared straight through the windshield at me. Its eyes reflected the headlights, but the rest of its face stayed strangely still. The mouth was open enough that I could see the dark space inside its throat while it breathed. The sound vibrated through the hood of the car like it was right against the metal. I threw the car into reverse and pressed the gas. The tires squealed against the concrete, and the car jerked backward fast enough to slam my shoulder against the seat. The thing didn't move out of the way. It stayed there, watching, as the car rolled away from it. For a second, I thought I was clear, and I started turning toward the ramp that leads back up to the street. Then I saw it again. It had moved. Not running, not jumping, just suddenly standing between 2 other cars closer to the exit ramp, like it had already crossed the garage before I even finished reversing. My chest tightened so hard I could barely breathe. I gripped the wheel and whispered to myself, "Just drive. Just drive. Just drive," while I pressed the gas again. The headlights hit the columns near the ramp, and the car sped forward toward the exit. Halfway there, the lights above the ramp went out, one by one. Darkness swallowed the lane leading up to the street. I slowed down without meaning to. The car rolled forward through the shadows, and the headlights barely reached the base of the ramp. Something moved across the light. The thing stepped slowly into view at the bottom of the ramp and crouched down low enough that its hands touched the concrete again. Its head tilted sideways while it watched the car approach. The sound came from somewhere deep in its chest. I slammed the brakes and the car skidded to a stop. The thing stayed crouched there, blocking the ramp completely. Its shoulders shifted slowly as it inhaled and exhaled. I looked around the garage, trying to figure out another way out, but there wasn't one. The stairwell door sat across the parking rows behind me, and the rest of the garage stretched out into dark corners where the lights never fully reached. The thing rose slowly to its full height again and took a step toward the car, then another. Each step sounded wet against the concrete. The car door handle rattled. My head snapped toward the sound. The passenger door. Something was pulling on it from outside. I looked across the seat just in time to see one of its long hands sliding slowly up the window glass. The other hand reached for the handle again. The lock clicked. The door began to open. I don't remember breathing after that. I just remember the smell of the garage filling the car again as the door opened wider, and the shape of it leaning down toward the seat beside me. I never made it out of that garage that night. The last thing I remember hearing was its breath right next to my ear. If you're listening to this, you might want to check the quiet places around you, the places where sound travels farther than it should, because sometimes something hears you before you ever hear it. If you have a horror story of your own, please feel free to drop it in the comments section. You never know, the next story could be yours. Subscribe to The Vault so you don't miss what comes next.